I think I'm live. Is that true? Is anyone in here? I'm starting at about 2 minutes early just to see, make sure that everything's actually working. It looks like there's 21 folks that are watching. If you can see this and hear me clearly, could you let me know in the comments? I only need 1 or 2 folks to say that it is working. And then we can get started. I'm open to having any questions, any general questions from people around our YouTube channel or the nursery or our chickens, the garden. So it's kind of like a very open-ended session. We can see how it gets directed. It looks like I see a lot of people saying hello and that it's working. Wonderful. If at any point the audio gets weird or the video gets sluggish or something, just give me a holler. We've got pretty inexpensive internet where we are, so it can get a little choppy sometimes. It's wonderful to see you all. This is the first time we're doing this winter. I think the last time we did a live session was back in March. And so, yeah, if anyone out there has some questions around, maybe there's some topics in the videos that you've watched where it'd be nice to get some clarity, or you're just interested about some aspect of our work that we haven't talked about in the videos, that'd be great. Yeah, so one question that just came up from Ingrid's Kitchen Garden. I was wondering how you got started in the nursery business. It's a really great question. And Ingrid, I think what I'm going to do, I've had that specific question come up a number of times. I hope you can be patient with me. My plan will be to do another live session that is entirely focused on what our nursery is all about. Like, how do we get it going? How does it work for us financially and the like? So keep your eyes peeled for that, and we'll plan to actually do that. It's a whole big topic of its own. And bear with me as well. I'm going to try to figure out how to balance talking in a comfortable and natural way while also checking out these questions. Easy question is, what zone are you growing in? Thank you for that. From Bennett, hi Jen Bennett. We are zone 5B. We're central New York, so we're in the Finger Lakes region. Pretty cool, cold, temperate climate here. I think 34 inches of rain on average per year. Honey Kafina, what is the best way to start sugar maple trees from seeds? I cannot tell you. I've never tried to do it. They seem to do a great job on their own in the woods. Chat amongst yourselves. If anyone has an answer for them, let them know the best way to start sugar maple trees from seeds. That's great. David Paul is asking, have you explored using a scythe before? I'd love to make some videos about this. I use a scythe extensively all growing season. I've got a bunch of them I work with. I love them. Scythe Supply is a great place to get a good basic beginner kit. I highly recommend the scythe as a management tool for sure. So Pete Pierce Realty, the 38 inches of snow we got snapped some of my trees I purchased. Do you think they will be fine? I'm sorry that that happened. Should I try wrapping grafting tape to save them? What I would do if it were me, not knowing the tree, not seeing exactly, I would see how they leaf out in the spring. And more likely than not, wherever they bent or cracked, I would cut directly below that to a next healthy set of branches and see how they take. I don't know that taping them up in the winter is going to be, you're asking for some fungal issues there, I think. Maybe some other folks have better suggestions there, but that's what I would do personally, is look for the next healthy branch set and cut them back. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in, so what I would offer up is that if, as you're asking your questions, if I don't address them, it's not because I'm ignoring you, it's just they're moving by fast enough that I've missed it. So feel free to set it, post it again in a few minutes, and hopefully I will actually catch it. Sowing for the future. I'd like to know how you really started. Yeah, I think that's another one that to go into better depth is going to be when I do this video about the whole nursery package. But I started selling plants back in 2010, and very, very informally, and just been chipping away at developing the nursery over the years. And it's really grown quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And yeah, starting very, very small, very local, at tiny little events is how we got the ball rolling, and it's grown from there. I'll save the rest for another conversation for sure. Yeah. The Nature Patch asks, you're from Brisbane, Australia. I have a lot of mushrooms coming up in my raised beds. How do you have any ideas how to prevent them? Don't prevent them. That's wonderful that you have mushrooms coming up. That tells me, and hopefully tells you, that you've got soil that is healthy and nurturing to fungal life, which is a good, healthy soil. You don't have to eat them. It won't poison you for them if they're not healthy mushrooms for you to consume. You can just let them be and let them decompose back into the soil. But fungal growth in your garden bed is a good sign, in my opinion. So let them be. Brian Torsell, thanks for the contribution there. I appreciate it. If true comfrey and Bocking 14 cross-pollinate, would the resulting true comfrey seeds be sterile, or would that be true to type? I wish I had a good technical answer for you. Bocking 14, which is one of the types of comfrey we grow, to my knowledge, to my experience, 15 years of growing it, does not ever propagate by seed. And so I don't know that it could cross with true comfrey. My experience is limited in that I have not grown true native comfrey that does propagate by seed, so I can't tell you exactly how that would work. But I would suspect that Bocking 14 would not contribute pollen that would make it fertile. So maybe somebody else that's deeper into the comfrey science realm can address that in a more thorough way. But I think that would be, they would just continue to grow on their own. Scott asks, how is the big pond filling up? It's chipping away, it's growing, it's filling. We've got some rain, a fair bit of snow, and the water that did get into the hand dug pond, the level seems to be holding, but it's not accruing at this point. But we've got the whole rest of the winter to see, and I'll certainly make videos if and when hopefully it does actually fill. I really look forward to making a video sharing that and seeing what we can do to help it actually seal as best as possible without using any plastic if we can avoid it. I'm seeing a lot of really wonderful comments of people appreciating the work that's going on. I really appreciate it, so thank you. Oh, here's a good question about our chickens. How many pounds of produce do we pick up each week for the chickens? We're getting 10 to 15 chickens this spring and have started collecting produce from a local grocery store to prepare. Anne-Marie, thanks for that. And congrats on getting some chickens. That's going to be great. I don't think I've got an answer for you as far as specific pounds. We get old containers, plastic tubs and totes from a local reuse store for $1 or $2 a piece. Whenever we go, we try to get another few of them. And once or twice a week, we'll get somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, between 40 to 80 gallons by volume of food scraps that are hopefully, for the most part, very good quality for our hens. And that's what we contribute to them, we provide them, and that's twice a week for 60 some odd hens. It's variable, but that's about the average. I think collecting food scraps now, building compost now, even though you don't have chickens to directly eat that, is completely legit. Earthworms can start working on it. You can start developing compost. And even though they won't be eating that leaf, that lettuce in the spring when they arrive, the soil life will be nourishing for them. So it should be good. Somebody's asking about the cicada emergence this year. I don't know anything about it. Tell me more, Nicholas. That sounds exciting. Is that 17-year cycle of cicadas? Maybe there's a big consumption about ready to happen. Yikes. Michael McMillan says, I have a problem with mice in my compost. Any tips? I may respond with a question to you of what is the problem? In fact, I want to address this in a more broad way for a moment, if you folks will indulge me. Very common comment I get on our chicken composting videos is, what about vermins? What about rats? What about mice? We actually love them. They tend to do a really good job of burrowing, and by doing so, providing reliable aeration deep into a compost pile. And they have needs and they have families and they're trying to make a living and do their thing. Unless you're seeing an explicit problem where the mice are challenging your health or getting into your home or some other thing, I would suggest that mice in your compost are providing aeration, a little bit of nourishment to the compost, and they're living beings, so they're not a problem. That would be my answer. Joe, your question, I can really feel I'm looking forward to making this video about the nursery idea, because it's, Joe's question is about getting things going to develop your farm and nursery. The short answer that I would offer up, it's kind of a common theme that I go towards, is whatever waste organic material you can start collecting. Almost all of us are operating on depleted and beat up soils. And so the more organic matter you can bring to the site, the better, no matter what you're trying to do. If it's a farm, a nursery, a home garden, whatever. If you can get free wood chips, if you can get waste hay or manures that are obvious or hopefully not laden with anti-worming medicine and that kind of stuff, the more the merrier. And that's something that's a great winter activity. In fact, a video that I put up today was talking about collecting waste hay from a local organic farm so that we can build our soils. Just one little note, but something you can act on right now in the winter months, I would hope. Cool, Jason Avers. You're adding Siberian peach shrubs to the orchard this year. Do you have any idea what kind of yields these trees might be expected to produce? Siberian peach, awesome tree, wonderful tree. Small tree, big shrub, ungrafted, low yields as far as size of fruit. So you normally see a peach, big, beautiful peaches like that. Siberian peach, much more like that, like a big golf ball, but it makes tons of them. And in our context, it produces them right around fall equinox, which is amazing to have a fall peach. And they're flavorful and good. So I don't think they're necessarily a great market peach, but they're amazing homestead, home garden resiliency peach. So I'm glad you're folding them into your system. Let's see. So many questions. Hey, Nim, nice to see you. So our friend Nim, he's provided some beautiful music for one of our videos. Are you worried about many waste streams drying up due to economic distress? Yeah, great question, and really valid and important. Yeah, in some ways, we've been shocked that we still have access to so much compost from co-op and from different sources. We kind of assumed it would disappear. I know I truly can't predict what's coming down the line with all that, but it feels like it's very reasonable to establish as many healthy relationships as you can with as many different sources of waste stream now, so that you're first in line as much as possible in your community to continue to have those. I feel like a lot of the relationships we have that give us access to old compost and food scraps, they're a little bit tenuous. They could shift, and we have to be careful with them. So we're kind of always keeping our eyes and ears out for other opportunities, other waste streams. I feel like unless our total economic picture collapsed, waste is almost a baked-in attribute of a capitalist system. And so you can consume that waste for your aspects. I'm hoping you're finding good sources or exploring lots of new ones whenever you can. And thanks, nice to see you, Nim. All right, Cool. Paul has asked, do you use root hormone when you do plant propagation? We do not. It's kind of nasty stuff. I've talked about in the past taking willow stems and putting it in water and getting some of the willow tea from that, and that helps a bit. But most of the plants we work with are easy to propagate, so we don't stress out about it, and works pretty well. Lolita's Garden, thank you so much. $10, that's very nice of you, I appreciate it. Your neighbor with the new system, how did this begin? They saw the example and wanted to participate. Oh, the neighbor, yeah, our lawn to food forest project. Cool question. Yeah, I think I alluded to it early on, maybe in the first video documenting that. He didn't approach us. He didn't say, hey, I want my lawn gone. I approached him in maybe April or so. We've been friendly enough. He was easy to approach and to chat, and I feel like he's very direct and straightforward. And I just basically, I've seen him mowing his lawn in the past and hating it. And so I just led with that. Like, what would it look like if you had less lawn and instead it was food and you didn't really have to do any of the work? I'll take on the brunt of it. And it's kind of snowballed into a much more rich relationship. We hang out more now. We collaborate on the project. The pond that was dug in his yard with the excavator, he swims in. He loves cold dips. We're talking about building a sauna now. So we just kind of, it's observe and interact, just keep seeing how that whole relationship can evolve. And it's been really beautiful. It's kind of an awkward thing to just randomly talk to a neighbor and say, look, let's get rid of your lawn. But the worst could have been he'd say no. And luckily he said yes. So it's been a really wonderful experience. Thank you for those questions, and I appreciate the contribution. Jordan, thank you. Appreciate that. I know I'm missing a bunch of questions, so sorry about that. I won't apologize again. It's just the deal with it. Let's see. The Nature Patch. I live with someone who regularly uses Roundup. I'm sorry to hear that. Despite trying to convince them otherwise, I can't seem to change their mind. Any ideas how to approach the situation? That's tough. I wonder what they're using it for. One idea, rather than saying it's dangerous, it's chemicals, it's cancer causing, all the stuff that hopefully a lot of us know and already believe strongly in, so we would never use it, is to address, well, what is the situation that they believe calls for Roundup? Is it cracks in the pavement? Is it weeds on the, can you help do that? Can you do the weeding that they think needs to be done with Roundup? Can you apply a mulch that would resolve where those weeds are coming up that they don't want? Is there a way you can support what their vision is so that they don't feel they need to use a chemical to get there? I feel like people that use that kind of stuff at this point aren't going to be sold on it that it's nasty, horrible chemicals, because that's pretty much out there, and they would have already gotten on board with that if that was what was going to change their mind. So I hope that can shift for you. What? Anne-Marie, let's see. I'm going to come back to you because I got a question in from you before. World Without Rule of Law, interesting name. Do you sell black or red currant cuttings? Would be interested in purchasing for spring planting. Thanks for asking. We do sell lots of currant cuttings and elder cuttings and willow. We hope to update our inventory for spring. We're going to be doing limited shipping this spring. I need to focus a bit more on getting caught up with all the different moving parts of our systems. But you can check back. You can also sign up for a mailing list. But definitely would encourage you on our website, if you poke around under resources, there's a permaculture nurseries page, and it lists a whole lot of other nurseries we love. And you might find one that has cuttings available for you. But you can check back in February or March and we'll let you know. The problem is, coming back to the Roundup question, the problem is that they want lawn, trying to spread mulch and food garden in the area, but it's tough. That is tough, and I'm really sorry you're dealing with that. I think the key, just whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Keep it as beautiful and productive and delicious as possible. And in the summer, let them try some interesting varieties of basil and a fresh tomato and a cucumber on a sandwich. And hopefully you can chip away at getting them converted. That's a tough one. People, the lawn, man, that is a, that's a rough cultural baked in concept. I hope and expect within my lifetime that will shift dramatically. But yeah, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Let's see. Ben Neb asks, do you think that you're an annual or a perennial? Excellent question. I don't die every single year, so I would suspect I'm perennial. It remains to be seen if I'm a long-lived perennial or a short-lived one, but thank you for your question. Let's see. Okay, Eve asks, when visiting our place, you described how you plant a peach tree and a nut tree in the same hole so that the nut tree can take over the peach tree when it reaches the end of its life. Which nut tree? That I don't necessarily in this, okay, you may be confusing some things. I've seen concepts, I'll just talk about this for a moment. The Bullocks brothers, I'd encourage those of you that are interested in this to research Bullock, B-U-L-L-O-C-K-S. They're out in Washington State on Orcas Islands. They, back in 1980, started a program. I'm sure many indigenous people all across the globe have done this for generations, but where they would plant a keystone, high-value, long-lived tree in the same hole. So, for example, a chestnut, a hickory, an apple tree. In the same hole directly to the south, being that we're in the northern hemisphere, the south, they would plant a nitrogen-fixing autumn olive or gumi or seaberry or some other nitrogen-fixing plant. And so in the same hole, you've got your long-term tree and your support tree, and they would cut the support tree over and over and over again to promote the long-term tree. So that might be what you're thinking about. But I also let nut trees like hickory and chestnut sprout all around trees like peaches because I know they're not going to live that long. And in the hedgerows, I see it all the time. Plants grow, plants die, and they also can live next to each other for extended periods of time. So I plant that way too. Okay, Three Good Eyes asks, what about septic systems when it comes to lawns? I'm scared of ruining a functioning drainage system, but would like to have something more beautiful and pollinator supporting. That's a common question I get when I do site consultations for folks, are real concerns around septic systems and leach fields. And, you know, it's don't ever plant anything over them, only lawn. I would really encourage you to do your own research on this, but my strong recommendation is that if you have a septic system and a leach field or leach field, is to consider replacing the lawn with perennial, at the very least, perennial pollinator habitat. You can search Prairie Moon is a company that sells lots of seeds. There's many different sources of great perennial seeds out there. But until you start planting actual taprooted woody shrubs and trees, I don't think there's any actual threat to a septic system or a leach field that echinacea and varieties of asters would make that's greater than having a lawn. So I'd encourage you to explore removing your lawn and putting in more pollinator support, or maybe think about raised beds that you can grow annual food crops in. That's reasonable too. Lisa, you ask, what are your thoughts on humanure? That is a great question. We are very much pro the concept for sure. It's a wonderful aspect. Let's see. Nicholas G, if you plant, say, a Dunstan chestnut, will the resulting tree be true to type? Complex answer. It's a simple, straightforward question in a way. The Dunstan chestnut, who are its parents? Probably two Dunstan chestnuts in an orchard, in which case it'll be very much like it. Is it a diverse mixed orchard that you have different parentage blending together, in which case it will be like a Dunstan, but also like its other parents. So probably a little bit of variety, and I would encourage you to explore, if you have access to Dunstan chestnut seed, plant them out and see what happens. You probably will get a more resilient and slightly diverse population, which I would hope you'd feel is a good thing. Let's see. Oof, boy, I see Living Well Farm. I'm downslope from land that will be soon developed into a subdivision. Oh my gosh, what do you recommend as a barrier for lawn chemicals coming into my land? One of my gardens is 10 feet from the property line. boy, it's some sad questions, but they're real. It's just real what's going on. Sorry you're dealing with that. First order of business in my mind, depending on the layout of the property, if they're upslope and it's possible for you to dig a swale that follows on contour, that basically, let's say here's your subdivision, here's your land and the slope, you can dig along that contour and deposit the soil downslope on your side. So when nasty juices come in, it has a chance to at least fill that trench first. That trench can be filled with charcoal, with wood chips inoculated with beneficial mushrooms. You may consider planting miscanthus grass or willows or other plants that are very fast, very biomass accumulating plants that you are not eating. You can then chop them and drop them upslope in between you and that nastiness. And just keep an eye on it. When you see water coming in, that's a chance to start modifying how it flows. You want to spread it out as much as possible, have as much interruption, as much organic matter that it interacts with, but between you and your garden. And I hope you can find a good solution there. Rick, simple question. Biochar, question mark. I would respond to you, biochar, exclamation point. We love it. We make it in our wood stove all day, every day, and really it helps a lot with all of our composting systems, absorbing excess nutrient. We have a whole playlist on the YouTube channel that we talk about it, so hopefully that addresses your simple question. Shane, thank you. And Sawyer, thank you. And thank you all for your kind words out there, for sure. Let's see. Jordan Frey, I caught your question because it's all uppercase. It worked out. Perennial Kale episode. Have you worked on any of the research projects for the Experimental Farm Network? Awesome question. It's a good chance to promote these folks too again. The Experimental Farm Network. Jot that one down if you're not familiar with them. You can find them online very easily. And what Jordan is asking about, they do a ton of really great community-centered experiments with developing higher quality potato onions or rutabagas or all these different perennial, better beach plum. So you can look into that. I haven't explicitly joined any of their research, but I've been in touch with Chris Homanix and Eric Tonesmeyer and Jonathan Bates and a couple other folks, and very informally have been playing around with some of their research and sharing notes back with them and trying to share notes with folks like you about what we're doing with that. Yeah, and Jason made a note in regards to the previous question about toxicity from a neighbor's, and I want to shout this out. King Stropharia, the wine cap mushroom, Stropharia rugosa annulata, as well as oyster mushrooms are both really great support mushrooms to filter and bioremediate toxicity, questionable elements in water. And fieldforest.net is a website out in the upper Midwest that is a great resource for spawn if you're interested in that. Do you like spam? No, I don't. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Cool. James Wall, I know you. How's it going, buddy? Nice to see you here. Question, can I just simply dig a hole if I want to make a pond like yours? My answer, tongue-in-cheek, would be you can definitely dig a hole to make a pond like mine, but like mine, it may or may not fill with water. We've got particulars where Sasha and I live, where I think you came to visit. I think you came to our spot here. It's very wet most of the year. So digging a hole almost certainly would be a pond. Where my folks live, the 6-acre site, it feels like I'm still, after 10 years, just beginning to understand what that deal is there. And it'll be very wet in the winter, but drier in the summer. I think that's more about water table expression. So it's a lot harder to answer that. But if you've got lots of clay, you can always dig a hole, and if it doesn't fill with water, you can put in a pond liner, add clay, or just let it be a vernal pool, and that's legit in the landscape too. It's lovely to see you here. Connor, do you have a seed-saving philosophy? I guess that I like saving seeds. I'm not sure that I have much more. I think if I were to answer that in a more thorough way, is we save seeds and we don't fuss over it too much. So sometimes it'll be a old bread bag filled with the stems and the stalks, and none of it's cleaned off, and we just crunch it up in the spring and throw it back out. Hopefully we clean the seeds. Hopefully we label them appropriately. Sasha's got a nice, fun organizing system in one of our rooms. So when we make the time, we try to. But it's very worthwhile getting into saving seeds, and don't let yourself get stuck on it having to be perfect in order for it to work. You can always get better later, or you can always just have it be rough and still be functional. Been saving seeds in a very loose way for a decade, and it works just fine enough. It's coming around again. This is another question. What would you say is the best starting point for being as knowledgeable as you for homesteading or general knowledge? I don't know that I'm that knowledgeable. I know that I experiment a whole lot, and I blab a whole lot about my experiments. I think the best way to start developing knowledge and skill around the things that at least I talk about in these videos is to just experiment. I went to school for fine art. I never had any formal training in this world, and I don't think it's necessary in order to do it. I think early on, supporting yourself to be tolerant of lots and lots of mistakes and failures is critical, so you don't get drowned in that, because there's so many things that go wrong and don't work out. But if you just keep experimenting, you'll start building, and it will become actual knowledge over time. I think if I do this for another 30 years, I'll be maybe actually knowledgeable. Right now, I'm just sharing lots of experiments, and that's what you're seeing is the during, not the beginning or the after. I'm just bouncing around here, so bear with me again. Sowing for the future. Thank you for that, by the way. Wondering if it's possible to use spent grain from a local brewery to get wine caps started. You know, I've heard of a lot of people getting access to spent grain for feeding pigs and for even chickens and that. I've never personally worked with it, so I can't speak to it directly. But I would think, so wine cap seems to be pretty content with a diverse and complex and somewhat challenging context. So spent grain, I could imagine having lots of competitor elements, living beings in there. So I think if you had wine caps started on a good quality substrate of fresh wood chips with a little bit of soil, and you added spent grain as a feedstock, that seems reasonable. You could start small and see how it goes from there. The same context that works well for red wiggler worms works well for wine caps, so maybe that should do it for you. Cliffside Permaculture, nice to see you here. And by the way, you've been making a lot of neat videos. I hope folks check out Cliffside Permaculture. Question, do you have some advice on passing the don't spread bugs and diseases regulations with only using waste streams for potting soil? Yeah, that's tough. What I would recommend, if you feel like you're in a context where the regulation is very strong around that, is focus on doing bare root plant sales. You can get sawdust that will not have any questionable creatures and blah, blah, blah in there. And you can soak that with water, and you can wrap that around roots and put it in plastic. And that's a way to sell plants or hand off plants that completely skips the potting mix approach. So Andrew's question is around the nursery thing, but it's a very direct one. How difficult and how costly was it to get a license to sell plants through your nursery? In New York State, it's $50 a year. It's straightforward. You basically pay $100 every 2 years, and they do a random inspection of the nursery at some random point in time, and it generally passes if you're doing reasonable things, if you don't have really questionable things going on. So we found that part of the process to remain legal and above board in that regard in New York State very straightforward. Okay. Good luck to you, David. 8 years till retirement, and then your wife and you are going to try to go off grid using solar and methane digester. I hope that works wonderfully for you. Yeah. Oh, Nim made a note about the wine cap that's worth saying. If you do grow a wine cap or Stropharia rugosa annulata, that after several, as I say, I've had the exact same experience. They fruit really heavily for the first few years, and then they super taper off. I think what happens is once they're locked into a site, they relax. I think they go big to spread as much as possible and really make their presence known, to personify them, I guess. But once they've been around and they've fruited for 3 years, 4 years in a strong way, they become very sporadic. It's almost like they need to move to a new scenario, which kind of makes sense in a way. Life Explained. That's a good question. How much time do you spend recording and editing your videos? If you've watched enough of our videos, you know that the answer is not that much. This is our equipment. It's a used iPhone 8. Just amazing tech for sure, but that's it. We didn't buy cameras and all that kind of stuff. I have a wireless mic, but I always forget. I remember at one point realized I could put an actual sock over the microphone. That helped on windy days, but I forget to do that sometimes. I try to focus that the vast majority of the time with this whole YouTube world is around actually interacting with all of you in comments. And so the videos are basically shot, done, chipped together real quick in iMovie and thrown on YouTube, quantity over quality, I guess. And then I try to have the quality come from actually answering questions and doing this sort of thing. So maybe that addresses that. And again, well, I said I wasn't going to mention it, but for those of you that didn't get your questions answered, thanks for being here, and try it again, and hopefully I'll catch it next time. We've got almost 200 people in here, which is super lovely on a Sunday evening that you're all hanging out with me here in our living room. It's really special. Let's see. Joe Zhang, question. Thoughts on trying beekeeping? Yeah, I tried beekeeping way back when. It worked, then didn't. We plan to come back to it. We're really interested in the idea of the ware hive, and we got some books on that and some lumber. And we still have most of January and February to build some hives. So we'll come back around and see what we can do with that. Manapeg beer. Man-pig bear. Do you like olives? Yes, thank you. Compost happens. Worms? Question mark. Sure. These questions are easy now. I'm not sure about that worms question, but let's see. Folks are talking amongst themselves too. I really appreciate that. One person recently mentioned to start a Discord server, and I've heard that term, but I don't think I want to get into more tech stuff. But what I would really hope happens is that for those of you that are asking questions and chatting amongst yourselves, figure out a way to connect to each other through email and develop a nice community that lives outside of all this. I hope that happens. Maybe it's already happening anyway. Let's see. One question here. What tools do you use to manage your online store? Someone's help for Mother's Pottery. Not going to say that it's like the best thing in the world, but I will say it's been really straightforward and really easy. Not sponsored by them at all, but we use Squarespace and I've been using it for 3 years. It does a great job for me. Probably less cost things out there or other options, but I've been very pleased with it. So I recommend Squarespace as a baseline. So Squarespace, you can give us next year for free if you want. You probably won't. Andrew Allen, best ways to transition an established forest into a food forest. My gosh, I think that feels too complex to try to answer in this context. But I'm going to keep that one in mind. I think what I'd like to do is make a video walking tour at our 6-acre site through the lens of that question, because there are 5 acres of that were really densely packed with scrubby, random mixed forest that's been now transitioned over to a more productive food forest. And I have a lot that I want to share on that, but keep an eye out for a video on that. I'll try to do a walking tour this winter. Thank you for that question. Oh, compost happens. The worms question was worm bins. We don't do worm bins because we've got the crazy composting system in our chicken yard, and that works well enough. Part of me thinks about what would it look like to actually have red wigglers growing in an explicit, in their own zone, so they're secured from the chickens. But for now, it feels simpler, just all compost happens in the chicken yard, and then worms happen or they don't. So it's inelegant, but it's been functional enough for us. Hopefully a lot of you are getting at least some of your questions answered. What do you mean sorghum from? Oh, that's you're having your own conversations in the side there, and that's awesome. Try some questions here, a little too broad to be able to address in a reasonable way. Engineer J, do you sell your chicken eggs? What do you do with old hens? That's a good set of questions. We have sold eggs a little bit, but not very much. We have 60-ish hens. They're pretty old. Most of them are beyond production age. So we don't get a huge amount of eggs. We get more than we need. So we keep our friends and our family members in eggs as much as possible. Sometimes we donate. In the summer, we can donate up to 12 dozen once in a while to some local food banks, which feels really good when we can. So our system was not designed at the outset to need to be an income stream, and we've kept the costs low enough, and the compost production is high enough that it doesn't need to generate money for us. Old hens, in theory, we harvest them, we kill them for meat for us to eat. But I will be honest, we have a really hard time making that decision. We wanted to harvest or kill 30 to 40 of our hens this winter to really make it possible to refresh our flock in the spring, but we haven't done any yet. So I'm not sure. I think for now, I would say the honest or the reality, we think we're going to kill them, but probably it's that we have a retirement community, and that's what's been happening for now, for the most part. We have harvested hens for sure, or killed hens. I say harvest, but I think it's more honest and real just to say we have killed hens for food for sure, and they're wonderful food for us. It's just hard to do that, really hard to do that. Pete Agard, a great friend of ours from nearby. Lovely to see you here, Pete. Hope you all are doing well this winter. Thanks for being here. Oh, yeah, David Paul mentioned there was a question that was asked about mosquitoes and ponds. Can you speak to that? That's a good question to address because that always comes up in any video about small hand-dug ponds. I find that mosquito larva and mosquito pressure is astronomically higher in like a 5-gallon bucket filled with old water behind the garage, or an old rubber tire that's filled with water in the ring, than it is in a living water system. So personally, I've not seen mosquitoes take off in open water systems that have ground contact between birds and dragonflies and frogs and all the other living creatures that interact with that water system. The mosquitoes are a non-issue. So I'd be more concerned about plastic contained small vessels of water. Those are way more of an issue. Probably don't need to be humming and singing between these statements, but it's what I do when I read a question. So now you know if I'm reading your comments with a question on a YouTube video, I'm probably humming while I read it. So Victor, your question about mosquitoes, hopefully I just addressed that. Jeff Martin, this is a cool question to touch on. Thoughts on sheet mulching in the winter for spring perennial planting aspirations. In a cold climate like ours, if I were to start right now applying cardboard and wood chips to the very cold, if not crusty, frozen soil, it would not evolve, it would not break down the perennial root systems that are in there much at all. If anything, it actually secures them and protects them in the winter months. Sheet mulching seems most effective after we've gone through spring and very active May and June. Late spring, early summer growth is at its peak and the soil is warm and moist. The cardboard, the wood chips, that breaks down the vegetation incredibly well. So personally, I would not sheet mulch now in anticipation of spring planting, but just dig, pull out whatever perennial weeds you can find when you put in your perennial plant that your hopeful plant goes in, and mulch nicely with wood chips, compost, hay, whatever it's going to be. And then consider the sheet mulching as an application for the active growing season for the fall perennial bare root plant time. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, I've learned that one quite a bit. Herman asks, have you ever met Steven from the Skill Cult channel? Did you know that he subscribed to your channel? For those of you that don't know Skill Cult, that's a really neat YouTube channel. So much good information. Check them out. We've never met in person. We've commented back and forth on each other's channels, and I know that he's subscribed, and hopefully he knows that I'm subscribed to his channel. I definitely have a lot of respect for all his knowledge, and he puts out videos with such detail and depth. He really puts a lot of effort into it. I'm glad you mentioned him. Yeah, somebody mentioned here, Diane, frogs take care of my mosquito in my pond and ducks. Yeah, wild creatures take care of it pretty nicely. They rot faster. Okay. Mark is saying, I currently have a lot of leaves about waist high across the whole garden. There's no more space. Do you have any tips so that they rot faster? Mark, you've been busy putting some leaves on there if they're actually waist high. That's a lot. I don't know that you have to have them rot faster. Right now, they're contributing incredible amounts of insulation to your soil. More likely than not, there's if they're this high, whatever, scale to scale, it's probably only about this much that's being actively interacted with by earthworms and soil life, while the rest are slowly breaking down. So in the spring, you could take what didn't break down, rake it off, and apply it to another area, and then work with the soil that's there. I would suspect you'd have no freezing over winter in your soils and a whole lot of really good surface earthworm castings to work with. You could probably go through with a mower and mow them all down and chip them, but why not just let them be, and then in the spring take the excess that didn't decompose and get another area moving forward so that in the fall that's ready. But waist high in leaves, you're doing all right. I thought I had a lot of leaves around. Cool, Jeff Martin. There's so many great questions, by the way. I'm having a lot of fun with this. I hope you all are enjoying this. We're getting some value from it. Jeff Martin asks, what perennial herbaceous plants have you had luck under black walnut canopies? That's a tough one. I can tell you from a shrub and tree layer, I've had direct positive experience with mulberry, elderberries. Autumn olive seems to be quite successful. Did I mention elderberry? Yeah. Pawpaws and blackcap raspberry. Herbaceous perennials, I don't know that I have a whole lot to offer you. I've seen Turkish rocket do decently well. Most members of the allium clan seem to be, if you look in wild context, like nodding onion and perennial onion sometimes are dominant ground cover under black walnut, so you could look into those. But yeah, it's a tough one. Walnut, it likes grasses and not much else in the herbaceous layer. If you find some cool ones that work for you, let me know. I'd be interested to explore some more. So many questions here. My gosh. Okay, Robin Fleck asks, I planted my Comfrey Roots in October, but despite 2 months of 70-degree days, they seem to be growing slowly and have holes in the leaves. How long until I can harvest for the hens? My strong recommendation, and this kind of zooms out to a lot of perennial herbaceous plants that you want to use for feeding creatures or soil building and the like, give them a full year to lock in, build a good strong root system before you take anything from them. So you planted them in October. Next October, start harvesting. If they grow insanely well in August and September, they're luscious and green, take some leaves. But long-term perennials, you want to give them time. There's a reason why they say when you plant asparagus crowns, you don't harvest for a few years. It's because you want those roots to get established, and they need their full bodies to be able to do that. It'll pay off in the long run for sure. Somebody's mentioning Double Dog Farm says Aronia grows under walnut. That's interesting. I would not have expected that. Rose family doesn't seem to do well with them in general, but that's cool if you've experienced that. Andrew Allen, what are autumn olive pros and cons? I like that question. I love autumn olive. They're incredible shrubs. I know they're illegal. It's crazy, but they're an illegal plant. The pros that I've experienced is in our complex food forest context, they have been nothing but allies. They grow very quickly. They seem to be completely deer proof or not interested for deer browse. The rabbits will nibble them, but not much, so they have very little herbivory pressure. They provide incredible nectar flow for honeybees and bumblebees, as well as native pollinators. Their beautiful aroma in the flowers. They make a very strong branch scaffold, so you can grow vining crops up them. They make an incredible nurse shrub, so you can plant later succession overstory trees just to the north of them, and they confer both nitrogen fixation and deer protection as the tree works its way up through them. The fruit is delicious. It can be preserved. It makes incredible jams and jellies. They're good. I like them very much. Oh, cons. They are illegal. And also, if you have very degraded, very abused landscapes that are very nitrogen deficient, they can expand very dramatically. So if you have hurt soils, they will take over pretty quickly. Nicholas G, have you propagated blackberries from stem cuttings? Bottom heat or no? I have good enough success propagating blackberries from tip layering. So here's the ground, it grows up, they come down. That tip pinned down for a while roots incredibly well. Gooseberry does the same, blackcap raspberry does the same. So I just lean into that as our strategy, and it works just fine. So I haven't pushed the dormant hardwood or softwood cutting technique. I find that blackberries, when I dig them up, will root sucker like crazy. So I imagine root segments would do a good job for you too. Yeah, Jason made a note here that you can grow gumi. If you're concerned about autumn olive, or if it's illegal where you are and you don't want to grow illegal plants and all that, gumi, which is Eleagnus multiflora, is a very similar plant with really delicious midsummer fruit for sure. Here's a question that I think maybe I saw briefly before, so I want to address it. How do you know when your soil is ready to be used? I have 30 hens that I've allowed to free range for the last year. I'm not quite sure I know exactly what you're asking there, but to zoom out a little, a question that comes up a lot is like, when is compost ready? When is it finished? And I'm of the thought that I don't worry about things being finished or perfect before they're applied to the garden. They go out as we need room for the next thing. And as long as they're not tilled into the soil life can bring that nutrient in as it needs it. And it doesn't seem to disturb the overall balance of things much. So maybe that addresses that. I'm not sure. When in doubt, if you have what you consider unfinished or uncured compost, use it as a mulch rather than tilling it into your soil. Maybe that's what you're asking, I hope. Victor is asking, how big is your property and roughly how many species do you grow as part of your nursery? Sasha and I live on 1/2 of an acre on a north slope at 1,200-foot elevation. The main nursery in Trumansburg, New York is 6 acres. How many species do we grow? Hundreds, a lot. I need to inventory them at some point. I have some things mapped out with tags, but most of it's in my head, and it's more than I can think of right now. James Wall, question: what about Cornelian Cherry? What about it? It's great. If you have more questions, please let me know. But yeah, Cornus mas, it seems to be very shade tolerant, very deer resistant, wonderful late season fruit. We love them. They're beautiful. They're really early browse for bees in the spring. So yeah. Marquis, have you ever cared for solitary bees on a property? Yeah, we've made I made a bunch of videos about mason bees in the past and making tubes for them out of I'm pulling a blank on Japanese knotweed and the like. You can look back through, but yeah, solitary bees are amazing, and we're always trying to figure out new ways to support their needs. So yeah, they're great. Thanks, Herman. I think you are too. Oh, cool. Cliffside permaculture. Very nice of you to provide this. There was a question before about black walnut compatibility, and so I'd encourage you to check out their comment. It's a link to mortonlab.org that looks like, hopefully it's a useful, good list for folks to look at. Zachary Taylor, this is a good and quick question. How long can bare root plants survive unplanted for? Yeah, so if you have a bare root plant in your hand, roots a-dangling, the analogy, the imagery I like to convey to people is you're basically, imagine you're holding a fish and the soil is water. You would never take a fish out of water and then think, I'm going to take a lunch break and then put this fish back in the water. So basically, if a plant comes out of the ground and it's dangling with the roots in your hands, you kind of want to start counting down from 10 slowly before you get it back in the ground. If you have a bare root tree that's healed in to soil or moist sawdust, then it can extend for quite a while. As long as they're in media that remains moist and not exposed to extreme temperature changes, they're as good as being planted as far as timing goes. But if it's in your hand and you can see the roots, start counting down from 10 before you get something addressed. It could just be in water that resets it to 10 again, but you don't want to let it hang out. Definitely not in the sun and definitely not with wind. David Paul, how much of your food is supplied from the farm? We eat a whole lot of what we grow, but we also don't eat everything that we grow. We collect from different things. We've got lots of barters with folks. We trade for flour and we buy raw milk from some great friends down the road. But I would say we're hard pressed to think of a meal that Sasha makes that doesn't have at least a whole lot of what we've grown in it. And there are many times where we have meals where it's just 100% from what we've grown, but we're not stuck on it having to be that. So yeah, a fairly large portion of our diet comes from what we grow. Matt asked, do you plan to stock any fish species in your large pond? We definitely plan to put fish in. I want to review all of the wonderful comments that people suggested and offered in the videos documenting that, because that's all completely new to me. So I have no advice for anyone on that. I'm looking forward to learning by rereading all that. Robin Fleck, is there a rule of thumb for planting annual seeds in the spring, like nighttime temps? That's a very complex question to try to answer. There's so many different types of plants. So you're going to have to really look up charts for that. You need to know your last expected spring frost. And then from there, you can start calculating when to start seeds, when to direct sow, all that kind of thing. Do you grow fig trees? Yes, we have one fig in a high tunnel. Seems okay. I think Sasha and I split one fig from it this summer, so pretty good. I wouldn't put a lot of effort into making figs be the next big venture for our nursery business. Let's see. Cool. We're at about an hour. I might start winding down here pretty soon. So I'll answer another 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll get close to wrapping it up here. Oh, cool. Here's a quick question. Has your neighbor, this is from Justified 3D, has your neighbor set up his greenhouse kit yet? Would you ever go this route over cattle panels? I actually was the one, I bought that kit with the idea that if we ever changed what's going on, I could take it down and bring it. So I've been putting it up. I'll make a video soon. It's completely up. And now I've been working on the end walls, making that out of black locust, and we'll be skinning it whenever we get a good spell of a few days in a row of around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So I look forward to getting that established. James Walk. Oh, I see. When will you sell Cornelian Cherry? Yes, we hope to sell. We hope to offer through the website for local and regional folks like you. We definitely have Cornelian Cherry. Yeah, I should mention, not in any way a plug of the nursery, but if you're not too far from the Finger Lakes, not too far from Ithaca, our website shows sold out for all of our plants most of the time. We have a lot of plants, and so if you're in the region and you're really excited to try to grow plants, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know, and we can sell bare root plants to folks. So James, we can get you some Cornelian cherries for sure. I just got a whole bunch of seed. I think I bought a pound of seed, so if that works out, we'll have them up on the website in a real way for the fall. Philip mentioned, some of the folks in my neck of the woods plant by phases of the moon. Ever try it? I'm aware of the concept, and intuitively it makes a lot of sense. It feels like the moon pulls on things in really different ways at different times. So the idea of planting just before the moon's pulling more water up to the surface so it can help germinate, and then that chases the water further down, that all makes a lot of sense to me. But to be honest, I've never folded it in a real way. So it's a good reminder to think about it for this upcoming season. Let's see, 1 or 2 more questions, and I'm sorry for those of you that I missed, but Greg Howell, when is the best time of the year to contact nurseries to buy trees and shrubs? Really, most nurseries are going to be selling out faster and faster. As a nursery and as someone who's connected to a lot of friends in the nursery business, I can tell you it will only become a smaller and smaller window because the demand for plants is just growing like crazy. It's wonderful, but it's also makes it challenging. So what I'd really encourage you to do is if you find a nursery that you're excited to get plants from, look to see if they have a newsletter or a mailing list or anything like, or any way to notify you when plants are available, and sign up for it. Hopefully they don't send you lots of stuff. I've never met a good permaculture nursery that abuses that, and they'll let you know. Like, we'll let you know when we're going to open up sales in the spring. It'll be a small window. But yeah, find out about as many nurseries as you can that are doing good ethical things. We've got our permaculture nurseries list at edibleacres.org. You can sign up for all those newsletters, and I'm sure you'll find good plants there. But we normally try to get our seed orders in by December or January for annuals for this upcoming year. If you're ordering bare root stock for spring shipment, you kind of want to be on it right now, I think. And Laura, hopefully that addresses your question a little bit. I can't give anyone a date as to when we'll update the inventory on our website, but it'll be sometime in later February, early March, most likely. We have so much rabbit browse that's such a variable in the winter that until they're done cutting down all the plants, I don't have a total count. So they need to eat what they need to get to the spring, and then we can sell the rest, basically. James, I'm not sure why you ate so much chocolate. I wouldn't say you're an addict. You're probably just a chocolate connoisseur. Excellent question. Joe Thomas, this will probably be one of the last questions. How often do you do these sessions? It's a good segue. We're in the winter and there's more time. It gets dark early. So I'm happy to do these more often. I think what I'll plan to do, maybe we'll just tentatively aim for the idea of Sunday evenings, because that seemed like a good time for most folks. I'll make a little community post a few days in advance of when I know I'm going to commit to doing one of these. Tonight was a very general question, pretty fun. I hope it was really enjoyable for me. It's lots of great, quite good, challenging questions all over the map. I think I'm going to start setting up sessions that are a little bit more focused. The next one will definitely be on our nursery, the story about how it got together, answering questions about how you might want to consider starting a small nursery where you are. And then from there, we'll just kind of figure out what feels good. But hopefully it'll work that people can come back when it works. So cool. So there's some more questions coming in, but I feel like this is the moment to wrap up. I'm ready for a sip of water and a sip of beer and to maybe have some popcorn and go to sleep, watch a movie and go to sleep. So for those of you that asked questions that I didn't address, I apologize, but I'd also encourage you to, other folks, you can chime in, and all of you are absolutely as capable as I am, or if not way more, of addressing all these questions. We've got an incredibly awesome community. I really appreciate all of you folks. It's been great having the Edible Acres community grow with all of you around. So we're going to get Sasha in on one of these sometime soon. Maybe we'll do a session with her about cooking and all her different amazing skills that she's been developing over the years. But for now, thank you all very much. Have a lovely evening. Happy New Year and be well. We'll see you soon.